Imagine if just 30 days from now, you had your business credit built, you had your foundation set up in such a way banks are willing to lend to you, and you have a handful of banks ready to lend. Would your life look different? In this video, I'm going to share with you my 30-day approval plan with step-by-step guidance on what to do each day. You can see dramatic results by next month. After building 7 figures in business credit for multiple companies, I have a straightforward process that you can follow, and when you finish this video, you'll walk away with a fully built company. Now stick to the end because you're not just going to see the best net 30 vendors to work with, but actually the startup friendly banks that I'm currently working with that fund brand new businesses with no revenue. Starting from the top, on day 1, we need to create our entity. That could be an LLC or a corporation. Now you could do this online at the Secretary of State website for your state, or you could do this through services like Swift Filings or even LegalZoom. I like Swift Filings because they have a free plan, but they also have a paid plan to where you can get your documents the same day. When we create our company, we want to create the company with a neutral name. For example, JL Management is much more neutral than JL Real Estate. It makes it easier to get funding down the road. If you already have your company created, that's fine. We'll start with what you have. But you might want to consider creating a second company so that you have a backup business credit profile that you could always use. On day 2, you're going to get your EIN from the IRS. Similar to before, you can do this yourself through the IRS website. As long as it's during their business hours, you just click apply for an EIN. That's what I do. Or you could pay a service or a qualified professional to do this for you. Day 3 is about setting up your address. Now, when you create your company, you can just use your home address and add a suite. So if I live at 123 Main Street, my business address can be 123 Main Street, Suite A. If I live in an apartment, say apartment 3, for example, I could call that Suite 3 or Suite 3A, Suite 3B, etc. for subsequent companies. Now you do have the option here of also getting a mailing address for your business that's separate from your home address. If you're going to do this, you can use a virtual office address, UPS store, or PO box for mailing purposes only. But your main business address needs to be either home address with a suite or a shared office address. You want to be careful using your main business address, the physical address, attached to a virtual address. There are some Secretary of States and banks and Net 30 vendors that will not approve you with a virtual address. So that's the workaround that I've been using for many years. Day 4, open your business bank account. Now the way that I teach funding is that you'll actually be opening business accounts with more than one bank. It's going to make networking and getting approved from that bank a lot easier. But at this stage, we're just looking to have our main business account set up. So it could be any bank that you want that you enjoy working with. For example, recently I opened a business bank account with Novo and I did everything online. It was very easy to do. All right, day number 5, we need to set up your business phone number. Now this is a phone number that needs to be separate from your cell phone number. You could use services like RingCentral or even Freedom Voice. Doesn't matter if you get an 800 number or a local number. My preference is local number, local presence, because I'm going to be working with those backyard banks. Make sure you set up your voicemail, state your company name or your hours of operation. All right, day 6, you need to build a basic online presence for your business. So a website is important and a business email. You could use services like Wix or GoDaddy. And nowadays using AI, they could build the website for you in a matter of minutes. Now remember earlier I said that you want to use a neutral name for your business. You can have more than one website here. So for example, think of SC Johnson. SC Johnson is the parent company of Windex. So they have 2 different websites. One is more generic for partners and for funding, and the other website is more specific to consumers. So you can certainly set your company up that way where you have a neutral name as your main LLC name, and then you have a trademark or a DBA that's more of a specific name. What we're focusing on is the parent company. So after you get that set up, you'll be on day number 7. And in good habit, day 7 is all about rest. Reflect on what you've done, pat yourself on the back because you just completed week 1. All right, next is to apply for your DUNS number. Now I have a document here that lays out all the steps to take and it includes the links of the websites that I'm sharing. You can download that free guide. I'll put a link in the description of this video. We're gonna go claim our free DUNS number. I know that you can expedite getting your DUNS number for a fee. It's your choice if you want to do that or not, but you actually don't need to do that following this blueprint. You can go ahead and get the free DUNS number. Make sure you have your login credentials saved so that we can go back and look at the DNB login at a future time. For now, we're just going to click Get a DUNS Online. All right, day number 9. It's now time to get our NAV account. NAV is a service that tracks and monitors our business credit scores. And if you get the NAV Prime plan, it'll boost up your business credit score pretty quickly across Dun & Bradstreet, Experian, and Equifax. This is super worth it because this is one of the quickest ways to boost up your business credit score. Boosting up your scores is super important to getting that foundation that we're building. So don't skip this step. On day 10, we're going to apply for our first Net30 vendor account. We're going to start with Uline. What you want to do here is create a free account. You then want to buy some items, usually over $50 of merchandise, and then you're going to pay for it later on Net30 terms. Find something that your business needs. I know sometimes with these Net30 vendors, it can be hard to find something that you need, but you can always get printer paper, ink, even toilet paper for your business. On day 11, we're going to get our Net30 vendor account with Quill. Quill is similar to Uline in that they offer office supplies and materials for your business. Same as before, create an account and buy something on Net30 terms. On day 12, look at getting an account with Granger. Now, when you're getting Net30 vendor accounts, it's not exactly easy. That's why I've given you plenty of time to do this. You may have to call the vendor ahead of time and speak to their accounts receivables department. You do want to build a long-term relationship with these vendors. Some of them require you to make purchases first before they'll extend Net30 terms to you. This is worth it, and you really only need to work with them until they report positive payment history to the business credit bureaus. Usually that's only 1 to 2 orders spread out over 1 to 2 months. So in this first 30 days, we're getting the accounts set up and we're building that foundation. Now there's also a company called eCredible, which is pretty easy to work with, and they will also boost up your business credit scores. You're not actually buying office supplies from eCredible, but simply by having the account and using it, they can automatically report to Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax, and Experian. All right, day 13 is all about boosting up your personal credit score. Now this could be an entire video by itself, and I do have training that goes into more detail on this, but also working with credit partners. So there are plenty of options for you if you do not have great personal credit. But the first thing that you want to do is pull your personal credit report. I like to use myfico.com, but you can use any service you'd like. You're going to look at all 3 personal credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. You want to review for any errors. If there are any errors in your credit report, including negative items, you can start to dispute those. At this stage, we're gathering information. So you could use pen and paper or create a Google Doc like I do and write out any errors that you have in your credit report, any negative items, how many inquiries you've had in the last 60 days, and what your personal credit utilization is. Also, write out what your oldest trade line is. So for example, if you're 40 years old and you get your first credit card at 20, your oldest trade line is 20 years old. Lastly, write out what your highest credit limit is. Now you might be wondering why we're only concerned about inquiries over the last 60 days, whereas most people will tell you to look at the last 2 years. It is true that when you work with more larger national banks like Chase and Amex, they're pretty strict about the number of inquiries that you have. But another advantage of working with backyard banks is they're not as inquiry sensitive. Quick story about my wife who is looking to get business funding. Her credit utilization was not that great. So what I did is I added her as an authorized user to my American Express card, which had a $0 balance and a $20,000 limit. I've had that card for nearly 20 years. When I added her as the AU, and this is called the AU technique, it opened up her personal credit utilization so that it was under 25%. Now that's the sweet spot, so make sure you write that down. It also added a seasoned trade line that was more than 10 years old and higher than $10,000 as a credit limit. These 3 criteria are super important if you want to go get business lines of credit and business credit cards down the road. Now, thanks to using the AU technique, she was able to get approved for $50,000 with KeyBank and Affinity Federal Credit Union as no-doc business lines of credit and business credit cards. So this process works very well. All right, that was a lot for one day. Take day 14 as a day off and rest. Day 15 is all about researching local community banks. And by the way, if you are liking this so far, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe. There's different ways to find those backyard banks. Besides just driving around and jotting down the names of banks you've never heard of, you can also go online and look at the top SBA lending banks in your state. This method will bring you a gold mine of business funding. Over days 15, 16, and 17, you want to start researching and actually calling these banks. Find out what programs that they offer and if they're startup friendly. The advantage here is since you started with the top small business lending banks list, most of them are going to be very friendly and have a habit, as we can see, of lending to small businesses. This is how I find my top list of banks in every state. So build a target list of at least 5 banks and set up either meetings or calls to learn what the bank has to offer. I know this step can be scary for some people, especially if you're not in the habit of networking. But I promise you, these bankers, especially the vice presidents of business lending or customer relationship managers, their job is to help you. They're getting paid an hourly rate to network with you and to learn about your business, your goals, and your needs. Your job is to present a good image to them and find out which bank you want to start working with. Let's move to day 19, local networking events. I have a student named Kenny who implemented this exact strategy and has been able to get over $500,000 in no-doc business lines of credit. Now, I'm not trying to create hype. I just want to make sure you're paying attention to this step. So you want to join your local chamber of commerce and networking groups. I recently attended a networking group. I found it on Instagram. It was free, included food and drink. And guess who was there? The exact vice president of business lending and his assistant that I just told you need to go find. So now you're networking, you're getting free food, and you're shaking hands of the person that's going to be your advocate at that bank. This is super powerful. All of the funding that I've gotten that is significant, above 25K, had a relationship and a handshake built into it before we applied. Having an advocate at the bank that's going to help you get approved is super, super important. All right, day 20 is to prepare your one-pager. This is basically like a business plan on what your business does. You should come up with a 1-sentence short elevator pitch of what your business does. Roll it off the tongue a few times. Practice so that when you're asked, what do? You have a good answer. It's also a great idea to have revenue projections because a lot of these banks are going to lend to your business based off your projections. They do this because you don't have revenue yet. That's a little known secret. Day 21, time to rest again. You could also use this day to catch up and organize any work. Congratulations, we're moving on to week number 4. So day 22 is where you begin actually opening additional business checking accounts with the banks that you built from last week. I generally will not apply for business credit the first time that I meet that bank. Usually I'm applying for business funding on the second or the third meeting. Now I know you could do applications online and skip a lot of these steps, but it's hard to get approved as a newer business if you're just doing online applications. So throw on a shirt and go do some networking. Day 23, open your second account. Some people ask me, I can have more than one business checking account? Yes, you can. You can have as many as you can keep up with. Now, why do we open business checking accounts before we apply for funding with the bank? The reason is that you are treated as a customer very differently than how you are treated as a non-customer. So if you're going to be applying for funding with these banks, have the account opened first. The bank will be a lot more flexible with you when it comes time to apply for funding. All right, quick recap. We built our business, we built our foundation, and now we've boosted up our personal and business credit scores. Day 24, it's time to ask about any pre-qualification offers. As you follow these steps, you're going to be getting pre-qualification offers in the mail to your business. A lot of those banks, even though they might be national banks, are in a good lending mood if they're trying to get you to pay attention to them. You can also ask the bankers that you're currently working with if they have any special deals or promotions. Here's an example. Banks like M&T, TD Bank, and KeyBank, and even PNC offer business lines of credit. If you're under a certain threshold, like a certain dollar amount, they'll do it as a no-doc application, which means no tax returns or financials are required. Usually that number is if you're applying for under 100K, under 75, or under 50. You got to talk it out with the bank. But day 25 and 26 are going to be actually applying, if you're ready, for business credit cards and business lines of credit. At this point, the NAV account that I had you set up earlier should be reporting. So what that means is that you should have your first trade line reporting to Dun & Bradstreet, Experian, and Equifax. You do not need a perfect business credit profile before applying for your first round of funding. You can do an initial round of funding just to get the wheels moving. It'll also help establish your business credibility. And you can always do a second round of funding in month 2 or even month 3. At that point, you're going to have more of those net 30s reporting anyways. Day 27, you want to follow up on your applications. You're not always going to get an instant approval. This is normal. Talk to your vice president of business lending, your point of contact, and see how the application is going. Now, if you get denied here, please do not be discouraged. That is normal. Talk to your point of contact on what steps you need to take to get it approved. You could also request a formal reconsideration request. Day 28, rest and celebrate any wins. Consider this, just making an application is a win. Most people think about doing something for months and they never end up doing it. You've actually did it. That's a win. Day 29 is all about planning and looking at your utilization strategy. As you're getting approvals for business credit, you don't want to max out all of your cards. Try to keep your utilization under 50%. But know this, you can actually have business credit cards and lines of credit nearly maxed out, and it will not affect your personal credit score. You could also have multiple business lines of credit and still go get multiple business lines of credit from future banks. There's almost no limit to how much funding you can get in your business. That's a little bit different than what we're used to on personal credit, but it can be a really great thing. It can really open up the amount of funding that you get. All right, day 30 is all about writing out a 90-day action plan. You want to be expanding your credit limits, asking for credit limit increases, adding additional trade lines, either net 30 accounts for your business or even personal accounts for you, with the goal of continuing to improve. I just showed you how to build a funding system that you could repeat for as many businesses as you see fit. The question is, what are you going to do with this new business credit entity and all of the funding that you can get? For me, I'll be investing in real estate, and I can't wait to hear from you in the comments below.